The following is a presentation of the Pro Wrestling Report. Informative, entertaining, and real since 1998. Live from the PWR studios in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, this is the Pro Wrestling Report Post Show on Blog Talk Radio with your host, Damian Nelson.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the post show for TNA Genesis 2012. It's the very first pay-per-view of 2012 in professional wrestling, and it is a pay-per-view that ended in what some would say controversial fashion. Damian Nelson here along with David Octavius and Tiberius, the alleged one-time Backyard Knockouts Divas Hardcore Lightweight Cruiserweight Hall of Famer hero. Hello, David.
You are just a jerk. Just
really?
Hashtag jerk. Yeah. Just say the Hall of Famer. It's just easier.
Well, but you're... Okay, well, I'm not going to get into that. We got to talk about TNA Genesis from the Impact Zone tonight. Another stellar event from TNA, Impact Wrestling. You know, here's what's interesting, David Hero. We've talked about the difference between TNA, WWE, wrestling in general nowadays. And it's fascinating how quiet social media was tonight in light of the fact that TNA had a pay-per-view on the air. It's almost disturbing, given the fact that it was a major match with Jeff Hardy involved in the main event. Good promotion, I would say, going into this pay-per-view. Overall, some good wrestling action on this pay-per-view, but a bit of a dud as it pertains to buzz being generated overall.
Agreed. I mean, just watching the Twitter feeds, there was far more Tim Tebow talk tonight than anything to do with TNA.
I didn't think the Packers were playing today.
No, the Packers were not playing today, but Tim Tebow was playing. And yeah.
Why does everybody hate him? Is it because he's so devout? I don't understand.
You know what it is? It's because he's much like myself, a winner, a guy that just goes and gets stuff done.
Moving right along, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, the TNA World Heavyweight Championship was on the line as Jeff Hardy got his opportunity against the champion Bobby Roode. Jeff Hardy would win that matchup, but he would do so by disqualification after Bobby Roode kicked the referee. Jeff Hardy wins by DQ. Bobby Roode remains the TNA World Champion. And, David, I would venture to say that while it may not have been well-received on a pay-per-view, very smart and continues what we've seen over the last few months and weeks from Bobby Roode. He's a cowardly champion, and he will do anything in his power to win.
You know, it's funny because the guy has all the tools to be successful and win on his own merit. But for some reason, they feel instead of making him into a machine, having him like a Kurt Angle-type champion, a guy that can go out there and just beat people up, they decide that, hey, you know what, let's just have him be cowardly. And you know what, I kind of figured that it might be that way tonight because of how the card was shaping up. I mean, they didn't do a whole lot to establish the other baby faces on the show tonight. Mm-hmm. So it looks like it's going to be Jeff Hardy and Bobby Roode at least one or two more times.
We are going to be taking your phone calls, ladies and gentlemen. We want to hear what you have to say about tonight's TNA Genesis pay-per-view. The number that you can call here in this program, the post show, 347-996-5278. Again, that's 347-996-5278. Be sure to press 1 to let us know that you want to speak, and we'll get to your phone calls in the second half of the program. Again, one more time, 347-996-5278. We've also got a live conversation going on in the chat room here on Blog Talk Radio. Join all the other fans in discussion as the show goes on. And one person asking right now, Rainier911 is the username, how many DQs on this pay-per-view? Well, I count at least 2. And that is never really well received when it comes to pay-per-views. Pro Wrestling Report's also on Twitter. We're going to be viewing your tweets and talking about some of your tweets tonight at PWR Show on Twitter, at PWR Show on Twitter, and on Facebook. Go to Facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Report, where the question there being asked right now is, share your thoughts on tonight's TNA Genesis pay-per-view. Is it a pass or a fail? And voting is pretty equal right now amongst both options. We'll get to the final results at the end of the program. I want to thank all of you for joining us here live. Jeff Hardy defeats Bobby Roode, but Bobby Roode is still the TNA World Champion. The X Division Championship was also on the line as Austin Aries went up against 3 different competitors, Kid Kash, Zema Ion, and Jesse Sorensen. An active match in the tradition of opening TNA pay-per-views with X Division competition. They did so tonight, but they did so and left the title on a very deserving Austin Aries?
Austin Aries is the guy that goes out there and does the little things to get the heat of the crowd. Even just wearing that little silly cape that he does. Just the way he acknowledges the audience and points, and it's just the little things that makes him so good at X Division that they can't afford to take that title off him anytime soon.
No, they can't. And, a lot of positive discussion out there about Austin Aries. He is resonating with the wrestling community, and it's very fascinating, the story. And this is one of two very fascinating things that I noticed tonight on the pay-per-view, first of which being Austin Aries. And remember when he was last in TNA, and even when he was in ROH last, before he almost retired from professional wrestling, I guess he would be one of the first to say he was a bit of a prick. Now, he's a student of the game, and really, the sky might be the limit for Austin Aries.
Yeah, but as good as he is, I don't see TNA, putting him into a program with a Jeff Hardy yet, or a Bobby Roode,
right,
or a James Storm. So, unfortunately, he's going to be stuck for a little bit. But if they give him an opportunity to go out there and do his thing, I don't see why he can't be a main event player.
And what's very, very good, though, I guess TNA deserves some credit, is back in the day, they might have noticed his popularity and hot-shotted him into that main event picture. So this slow burn and this build for him in the X Division is almost like that natural progression from the X to the world, from the Intercontinental to the WWE, or for the United States to the WWE. It's the way wrestling back in the day was, and I like it, because you get to understand and maybe relate better to an Austin Aries before he gets that shot.
Well, also, and that's how they built up AJ Styles and Samoa Joe and other guys that, at first they came out and they won the X Division title. Then eventually they moved on towards the World Championship. So, it is a nice slow build. Let's hope that they just don't forget about Austin Aries 6 months from now, because he is, like I said, he does it all. He may be a little bit undersized, but overall, I think he's just as talented, and he has great mic skills. He can cut a promo, and he's a ring general. He called most of that match tonight.
Mm-hmm. A couple of comments, or at least one comment here coming from the chat room on Blog Talk Radio. A user by the name of Bahama Boy 242 says, "Here's the thing. TNA just didn't have anything that made me want to care about this pay-per-view." And David Hero, I got to admit, going into it, I was almost in that same boat. It was somewhat of a chore to motivate myself to watch this pay-per-view tonight, and I don't know if that's my fault. I would venture to say it's not, or if it's TNA's fault for not making me really want to do it.
Well, the problem is that TNA is on Thursday nights. The show isn't live, so sometimes we take advantage of the spoilers, and we see what happens 3 weeks before it airs.
Yep.
Which really doesn't give us a sense of urgency to tune in for 3 weeks, because, okay, we know what's going to happen now for the rest of the month. Well, by the time that pay-per-view comes around, we've kind of forgotten what they've been building towards.
We've already consumed it and moved on.
Exactly. And I think if TNA would stop taping 2 or 3 weeks in advance, I think that would help the overall product.
Well, huge news, though, from TNA just this past week. They're going to be doing a television taping for Impact Wrestling over in the UK, in London, I believe. I believe the date is January 28th. This is huge news, and this really could be something for TNA to capitalize on. I can't imagine the costs involved, by the way, but this is big for them, and maybe, and they did adjust their taping schedule, now only doing 2 days over the next, tomorrow and Tuesday, and then going to finish out over in the UK. But that's pretty huge for them. We'll see where it goes. But let's continue to talk about tonight's TNA Genesis pay-per-view. And the next matchup was the Pope versus Devon. We talked on Be the Booker, David Hero, which can be seen on our website, pwrshow.com, about whether or not this particular feud had extended its welcome beyond what we wanted. And tonight, I think we saw the conclusion of that as the Pope's boys, as Devon's boys, if you will, went back and aligned themselves with their proud papa, Devon, allowing Devon to win that matchup over the Pope.
And it's just amazing because it was you could so tell that's where it was going. You could just feel it that the kids were going to go back with their father. And you know what? That's great. You know what? it's a great story. But my goodness, if those kids were really 16 years old, they shouldn't have been in that spot to begin with. And it just didn't make sense. I mean, even when we did the Be the Booker and we saw it and we looked at it, and I jokingly said this is the match that's going to open the show, it was the second match from the bottom. And not saying that Pope and Devon aren't talented, because they really are, but you could tell that the fans were not interested at all in this match.
Right. They were done. Now, there was one interesting thing. You tweeted out something about one of your favorite songs. I think it's called Mr. Telephone Man.
Yeah, that was. When I saw, what is it, Terrell and I don't know, Devon's kids. Yeah. Honest to God, the first thing that crossed my mind was New Edition. The way they were dressed and the whole thing, and wow.
I think if you follow David on Twitter, you can check out that link, because I would venture to say a lot of newer wrestling fans may not be familiar with New Edition. Now, did New Edition give us? Was that where Bobby Brown came from, or was that Keith Sweat?
That was Bobby Brown, baby. Absolutely.
So, Gunner versus RVD. Ric Flair accompanying Gunner to the ring. Gunner gets the win on RVD in a surprising move. But as you said, David Hero, Gunner needed this, and the DDT to the concrete, progressing what we've seen Gunner doing over the last few weeks, and RVD getting stretchered out with the neck collar to provide more emphasis to it. This one was well packaged.
Well, and they had to, because, Gunner is the kid that a few weeks ago was out there putting over Garrett Bischoff. So they had to do something to say, hey, thank you for doing what you do. Gunner is a young stud. He has the ability to eventually carry some main event matches, because the guy is good. He dedicates himself to the business. He works out. He eats, breathes, trains, sleeps, snores, drinks, wrestling nonstop. And he's one of the guys that, if TNA is smart, is going to start to build around, because he wants to be in TNA. He's not thinking about possibly going to the WWE or going back to the WWE, much like what Rob Van Dam is doing. And, for me, how they structured out RVD, maybe that may be the last we see of him. I mean, let's not forget, when RVD was structured out in the E, it's after he took the punt kick from Randy Orton.
I was thinking that, actually, when they were doing it. I'm like, there has to be a reason for this. And, March is not far away, and maybe TNA is going to be smart, and due to RVD potentially having those feelers out or expressing interest in returning to WWE, maybe they're going to take him away and attempt, at least as best they can do, decrease his value for that company.
Well, no. First of all, the way TNA does this stuff is they promise these guys X number of dates. So. Right. Maybe if he's already met his obligation for his contractual year, they're going to keep him off TV. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh. Well, we'll see what happens with RVD, but I too thought the same thing. There has to be a reason why they chose to go with the stretcher route on that, because I'm not sure anybody else Gunner has attacked in the same fashion has had that same treatment. I could be wrong there, but I don't believe that's the case.
Not yet.
The Knockouts Championship on the line. Mickie James attempting to go after Gail Kim. Madison Rayne is put in a cage at ringside and elevated and hoisted above the ring. That would, however, not stop the inclusion of brass knuckles in this matchup, causing Gail Kim to still walk out as the Knockouts champion in another match that ended in disqualification fashion.
And it was actually a fairly solid match. I mean, both girls were doing a great job of, beating each other up and doing everything that they wanted to do. And just unfortunate that they felt they had to, have the brass knuckles come into play.
Yep. And the next matchup was Bully Ray versus Abyss. It was a Monsters Ball match, and a brutal match to say the least, which saw barbed wire, tables, chairs, and everything else involved. Some saying this one of the strongest Monsters Ball matchups we've seen. It is definitely akin to some of the earlier Monsters Ball matchups we saw along the career of Abyss, but I thought this was excellently executed by both men, and Bully Ray continues to prove just how great he is as a ring psychologist. I'm not talking about his wrestling ability, folks. His ring psychology as far as working that crowd and working everybody out there. I was a little distracted there because we were looking at Twitter as well. And David, you'll love this. RVD, who was stretchered out tonight, just tweeted this. I love how National Car Rental wires 2 key remotes together, so if you lose one, they're both gone. Brilliant. So the man who was stretchered out just put out on Twitter to all of his followers that he's in his rental car at least trying to get in. I mean, I guess he's a rock star, so he can do that kind of thing. I'll say it again. I haven't said it in a while. I don't understand his appeal. I don't understand. But back to Bubba Ray. He's just excellent, David Hero. I mean, he has just gotten so great. He was a nominee for Wrestler of the Year because he is that damn good here in the Pro Wrestling Report honors. But tonight, him and Abyss really delivered in that ring tonight, I thought.
You know what they did? And I remember when Bubba Ray first went solo, and I cringed. I'm like, oh, my God, this is going to be a nightmare. And you know what? Early on, it kind of was. But I will say this. Bubba Ray has rededicated himself, and he's become one of the top guys in TNA. He's been one of the guys that they go to, you know, and he's been fantastic. I mean, him and Abyss, it wasn't a great match, but they definitely told a story. And once again, Bubba Ray is able to get his feet back after the match, after losing, by, I don't know, hiding him somewhere in a landfill, for all we know.
Well, TNA, this was, I'm not sure if they addressed it on the broadcast, but they did say on Twitter that Bully Ray and Abyss had still been fighting backstage after the matchup, and apparently that resulted in Abyss not doing so well to Bully Ray. This one obviously will continue, it seems, but there was some Immortal action there. If Abyss won, he was to join Immortal, or if Bully Ray won, he was to join Immortal. But Abyss wins, so I guess that means he's out of Immortal. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Sorry? Correct you if you're wrong?
Oh,
I do that every week.
I know there's an off chance that I am, but be that as it may.
Okay.
I thought you were going to, again, I'm trying to keep you on track with your New Year's resolution to be a nicer person.
I have been. I've been great. I haven't been snapping. I've been courteous. I've been respectful.
Let's move on to the next matchup. The endorsed Crimson one half of the tag team champions in TNA Wrestling with Matt Morgan goes up against the winners of the wild card tournament, Samoa Joe and Magnus. Not a bad match, a little dull at times, I will admit that, but we saw the tag team champions retain, and it may be questioned, David Hero. If I'm a fan who's been watching Impact for the last several weeks, what if I had invested in that tournament, and generally, winners of a tournament move on to secure whatever prize the tournament winners get. So a bit of a detraction from normal wrestling booking in this matchup, but a match that saw Crimson and Morgan move forward and continue as the tag team champions.
Well, if you realize, Bobby Roode won a tournament also. He did.
That's true. That is true. Back at Bound for Glory.
So, obviously, tournaments in TNA, I mean, don't mean anything. Tournaments are non-applicable in TNA.
You know, one comment that just came across in the chat room here on Blog Talk Radio, and I want to talk about it with you, David Hero, because I think it's a point worth mentioning, because a lot of people have mentioned it tonight, and that is from Bahama Boy 242, I think we referenced him earlier, said, Taz and TNA made me feel sad tonight. A lot of negative comments about their commentary. Here's a couple things that struck me, and again, commentary for professional wrestling is not easy, and it's widely known that in general, Taz and TNA are not as produced, if produced at all, as WWE broadcasters, meaning there's no one telling them what to say in their ear. They sort of come up with their content on their own, which is why you get the random laughing from Abyss. You get TNA talking about pre-tapes that most fans don't understand what that means, so don't talk about it that way. It was a pre-match interview. But a lot of commentary about the commentary tonight, and some people saying it was bland, some people saying that they weren't even excited about it, thus the fans couldn't get excited about it. But we've talked about Taz before, and we've heard actually JR the other day saying that the team of Taz and TNA is good when someone asked if he was going to go to TNA. Is it what they're given to work with, David Hero, or do they need maybe a shorter leash as far as making sure they're putting over everything that really needs to be put over on these pay-per-views?
Well, I'll be honest. I don't know what they do, but maybe creative needs to sit down with them and say, here's some bullet points we want you to get over about this match. Here's how we want you to help us tell the story. I mean, Jim Ross has been around, and Jim Ross grew up with worked with the greats on his way up, with the Gordon Solis and the Heenans and whatnot, the guys that would tell stories, and the Lance Russells. Taz never had that. Taz was always produced. He always had somebody in his ear.
Yeah.
So he goes to TNA, and maybe he believes his own hype. Maybe he believes he's that good, that he is FTW and whatever else.
Oh, he believes it.
And now there's no one there to reel him in. And much like Mike Tenay, maybe Tenay, he used to work with Heenan and Shivani. And not saying Shivani was great, but at least those guys, could complement each other in a different way. Whereas with Taz is like an edgier Bobby Heenan, I guess, and Tenay is kind of like a laid-back, timid Gorilla Monsoon.
Yeah.
Okay? And, boy, if they would tell a story and not try to get each other over, I think it would be far better. But at the same time, the announcers also have to feed off of the audience. And that TNA audience in the Impact Zone, no offense to the people there, I'm sure most of them are pretty decent people, but they absolutely suck as far as being wrestling fans.
Wow.
I mean, they try to create their own. They want to be the show more than them wanting the wrestling to be the show. They try to hijack the entire event.
Yep.
And that just seems to be a problem down there.
And I don't know if it's still the case or not. I would venture to say maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But Mike Tenay used to be a prominent part of the booking meetings, and I guess that would make some sense as far as knowing what actually should go over and what should not. But a lot of people have talked about the Brother Love or Bruce Pritchard era in TNA, and arguably Impact has been better over the last few weeks. The one thing I've noticed about Impact Wrestling, TNA, whatever it's called on this particular evening, is there's been focus. Whether or not you like that focus, they've stuck with some stories and moved them forward and given the opportunity to the fans to buy into those things or not, which is something that isn't really happening in wrestling overall right now. One other comment coming from the chat room before we take a time out, this referencing what you just said about the TNA crowd, David Hero. This comes from a user by the name of There Mac, it looks like. Says, Hero's totally correct. The TNA crowd sucks. Even Rick Ross sucked. Rick Ross, a guest of TNA tonight, getting a little bit involved with Zema Ion. Who, David Hero, when we come back, I'm going to talk about Zema Ion because I think I saw something tonight that I want to discuss. When we come back, we're going to be taking your phone calls. We're going to talk about the other matches. We didn't talk about the other fascinating thing I realized tonight on the TNA Impact Wrestling Genesis pay-per-view and more. The number you can call is 347-996-5278, 347-996-5278. This is the Pro Wrestling Report post-show for TNA Genesis, live on Blog Talk Radio.
Don't forget to follow PWR right here on Blog Talk Radio right now. Be reminded of upcoming episodes and never miss Blog Talk Radio's most popular sports show. Follow PWR now. Stop stalking your ex and be our friend on Facebook and join the tremendous worldwide discussion. Facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Report. Missed an episode on the Pro Wrestling Report? Thanks, pal. Subscribe to the show on iTunes and take the show with you wherever you go, even in the bathroom. There's only one place to get the latest from pro wrestling, including the only place to get 100% verified wrestling news. PWRshow.com. PWRshow.com, where you'll never find pop-ups or misleading headlines. Watch or listen to all of our latest TV and radio broadcasts on demand, and get caught up on wrestling news between episodes. PWRshow.com is the cleanest, friendliest, and most fan-friendly source for wrestling news on the web. Live from the PWR studios in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, this is the Pro Wrestling Report Post Show on Blog Talk Radio with your host, Damian Nelson.
Welcome back to the post show for TNA Genesis 2012, the first wrestling pay-per-view of 2012. This is the Pro Wrestling Report on Blog Talk Radio. I want to thank all of you again for making Monday Night Meltdown from this past Monday night the number one show of all sports shows on Blog Talk Radio and in the top 5 shows all week long. for Blog Talk Radio. Be sure to follow the show and take a listen to the show on Blog Talk Radio tomorrow night, Monday Night Meltdown, exclusively here on Blog Talk Radio, every single Monday night, right after WWE Raw goes off the air, along with myself, co-host David Hero, and all of our correspondents from both the Impact and SmackDown side of things as well, and Linda Kay with the news desk. That's Monday Night Meltdown tomorrow night, 10 o'clock. Never miss an episode by following us right here on Blog Talk Radio. Another matchup, David Hero, on tonight's Genesis pay-per-view that we have not yet talked about was Kurt Angle versus James Storm. Kurt Angle gets the win, and James Storm, I'm not sure what's next for him, but there were some shenanigans, as Taz said, at the end of this particular contest.
You know, to me, it did not make any sense whatsoever. I mean, here's the opportunity to get one of your younger baby faces over, let them move forward, and let Kurt Angle put somebody over. I mean, yeah, you know, Storm has gone over on Kurt the past couple times on Impact in the last pay-per-view. But it's like, wow, here's an opportunity to, like, catapult him back into the world title picture, and they didn't do it. And they didn't do that with any of the baby faces for the most part tonight, which I found to be rather interesting and frustrating all at the same time.
That's tonight's TNA Genesis on pay-per-view. I referenced one fascinating thing earlier. The other thing I noticed tonight was the irony, I guess you can call it, of Sting's glowing endorsement during that backstage promo of Jeff Hardy. And really, when you watch it and you see and listen to what Sting is saying and think back to just about a year ago, early March last year, when Sting was in the ring during that embarrassing incident with Jeff Hardy. Now, we've talked to Jeff Hardy. We've given the only interview with Jeff Hardy since he came back from his time off. Clearly, he's a fixed man. He's a repaired man. He's a better man. He's back to being a focused man. But to have Sting give that endorsement it's really fascinating. I'm not sure TNA has told that story well enough of Sting's involvement and the fact that Sting was the other man in the ring that night.
Well, I'm sure that they've mentioned it, but I mean, you know what? Sting is doing what is needed from Sting. I mean, because Sting is obviously the number one babyface in that company, and much the same way John Cena endorses Zack Ryder, Sting has to endorse Sting, or Sting has to endorse Jeff Hardy.
Yeah,
because you know that's how the character gets rebuilt. I mean, when the fans see, oh wow, Sting, he's supportive of Jeff Hardy, well, now we can be too. So Sting put his seal of approval on the charismatic enigma.
Did you miss Janice? Because she was back tonight in that Monsters Ball match. I'm not talking about Janice Carter.
Yeah, you know what's funny is when I was watching the Monsters Ball and I saw all the stuff and shenanigans coming up from under the ring, I'm thinking, how relieved must Hornswoggle be knowing he doesn't work in TNA? All those dangerous objects under the ring that he could fall and trip into.
That is true, David. Now, we also asked the question before we took that break, that timeout, was about Zema Ion. And, you know, while I'm not ready to endorse him, as I've endorsed Crimson and Dolph Ziggler and Heath Slater and Cody Rhodes and The Miz, you see where that got all them, there's something there, David Hero. There's a charisma, there's an attitude, there's a unique look, and there could be a future for this guy in TNA who's been giving him time, by the way, on TV, on Impact for the last few weeks. Not just to wrestle, but to actually talk as well.
I am shocked that you would like anybody who's been named after an alcoholic beverage.
No, it's spelled differently.
No.
He's Zema, not Zima.
Oh, it's actually Xima, I believe. But I could be wrong.
Well, either way, you're wrong.
Or just mistaken. But, you know, I mean, yeah, you know what? He does. He's got a great look. He's got great charisma. And in the X division, I think he can definitely grow and flow. Or they're using him because he's inexpensive talent right now. I mean, if you look at how TNA books their stuff, it seems like they have an A team and a B team as far as who gets paid and when they're going to be on. I mean, there are so many guys missing from tonight's pay-per-view. I thought it was, you know, just ridiculous. But, no, I like Zema Iron. I think he is, I think that they're on to something there with him because he's a good-looking young kid that once they get more of a female follower, more women in the audience that aren't just friends and family, I think that they could draw some money with that guy.
I want to correct someone in the chat room here because this is a rumor that was started, and we here at the Pro Wrestling Report don't deal with rumors. But a user by the name of Fueled System asks, Damian, why do you ignore that you endorsed Rob Terry? I never, ever, in any way, shape, or form endorsed Rob Terry. In no way. That would be like endorsing Mason Ryan, and I ain't going to be doing that. I only endorse future champions before anybody else realizes how great they are. If you look back to my endorsements, I was on the Cody Rhodes bandwagon years ago. Dolph Ziggler was more recent, I will give you that. The Miz, before anybody thought he had anything. Heath Slater, early. And also Crimson before he became a champion. So don't go messing with no country boy. Don't go messing with my endorsements. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, sir. Okay. You did endorse Rob Terry. I was there when you
were not. I did not endorse Rob Terry. I want to remind everybody we are ready to take your phone calls, ladies and gentlemen. The number 347-996-5278. We've got a number of you who have called in, yet no one's indicated that they would like to speak. So, if you've called in and want to speak, do not press 1 when you did so. Please redial in and press 1 and let us know you speak so that the interface here can tell us that we have callers who want to speak. Otherwise, we will not be taking you live on air here. And overall, David Hero, this pay-per-view, I think, delivered some good wrestling and, relatively decent storytelling. And I really like what they did overall tonight, starting off the pay-per-view with the arrivals and then the emphasis on the main event between Roode and Hardy by Taz and TNA, and making that really the overwhelming focus of the pay-per-view tonight. The one thing that's always going to be a continuous issue for TNA Wrestling, one that they are very aware of, explicitly aware of, is when you really break it down at the end of tonight's 3-hour pay-per-view, aside from the extra hour, what was the difference between tonight and their Thursday night Impact Wrestling efforts? Because the look was the same, the feel was the same, the talents were the same, everything was the same. And that's going to be their biggest hurdle, David Hero. They can't continue to survive.
The way they cut their promos was the same. It was the same attitude and language, and it was just like watching Impact. But the part that was frustrating is that, Cal hits the button for the high def at $49. And I could have watched it just for regular, and I wanted to know the difference. So.
That is a problem. Yeah. Believe me, that is a problem. But here's what's, I guess, overall, the impact, if you will, of TNA Wrestling. If you were a fan of ECW, if you knew ECW, which, again, a different time, different scenario, different era, different players, different desire of the fans, ECW was distinctly different from both WCW and WWE. And you've got to argue that someone being the third company in the 3 companies right now would have to take that ECW-ish role. Arguably, Ring of Honor is doing that. Some would say, I think most would say, TNA's not doing it at all, because really at the end of the day, if you hold up the products side by side, if you look at the nutritional information on the back of both products, WWE and TNA Wrestling right now, you would see the same basic ingredients. The percentages would be different, but you would see the same basic ingredients. And at any time in professional wrestling, when there was actual competition and a company doing equal to the other company, being WCW, WWE, and even ECW's prominence at the time, there was a different formula. ECW was...
here's the difference.
I'm not talking hardcore only. I'm talking in overall feel and fan devotion. TNA, WWE... they're using the same formula right now, which means for the fans in general, why watch TNA?
This is my theory on the whole. What is the biggest difference between the 2 companies? Okay? And here's my opinion. And some people may laugh, some may think that's ridiculous, and it has no merit whatsoever. You walk in to Toys R Us, and you walk down that wrestling figure aisle, you will see tons of metal action figures of 2-packs and 3-packs and belt packs and, accessories and the whole thing. And then you look down a little bit further and you'll see a big section of UFC action figures by Jacks. And you go a little bit further down, and then you're going to see these, I like to call them the big lots 3-packs of TNA wrestling, where it's Suicide, Jeff Jarrett, and Samoa Joe on a 3-pack. And all three guys have the same ripped, shredded bodies and just different heads. And it's like, well, here is the problem, because if you can't get your fan base, a younger fan base, to want to buy those action figures, to want to get invested into these characters, why are they going to want to watch it on Thursday nights, and then why, absolutely, are they going to want to order it on a Sunday night for a pay-per-view? I mean, Jeff Hardy and Sting are two of their biggest stars. You don't see those figures anywhere. You don't see any merchandise available for kids in any stores. I mean, you go into Walmart and you will see John Cena pajamas, Raw, Rey Mysterio, SmackDown, all different kinds of kids' clothes, even for the adults. You don't see TNA, nothing. It's nowhere to be found. So there's no brand recognition. And once again, that is where TNA drops the ball. I mean, they had the Jax figures come out for a little while, and they actually look pretty good. And, because Jax does wrestling figures, but they weren't selling. So now it's become more of a novelty item at certain stores. It's almost impossible to find.
Mm-hmm.
So brand recognition is the one thing TNA has been struggling with since they started this company. And they spent more time with direct auto insurance, but that doesn't get them anywhere either.
Right.
So it's just a bad thing for TNA right now.
Yeah. Well, we are going to take our final time out of the evening, and when we come back, hopefully we'll have some callers who want to speak. This is the post-show for TNA Genesis, live on Blog Talk Radio. We'll be back right after this.
Missed an episode on the Pro Wrestling Report? Thanks, pal. Subscribe to the show on iTunes and take the show with you wherever you go, even in the bathroom. Don't forget to follow PWR right here on Blog Talk Radio right now. Be reminded of upcoming episodes and never miss Blog Talk Radio's most popular sports show. Follow PWR now. Live from the PWR studios in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, this is the Pro Wrestling Report Post Show on Blog Talk Radio with your host, Damian Nelson.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Damian here, along with David Hero. And for those of you asking in the chat room, David, a lot of people inquiring about your status with the company here. And you did serve your 1-week suspension successfully and returned on this past week's Pro Wrestling Report Primetime. And how about that new point-counterpoint segment? Apparently there was a problem with the clock, at least some people think.
Yeah.
It's not a problem with the clock.
Right.
Andy and I have an agreement. It'll be fine.
It always is, isn't it?
A couple of callers now want to speak with us live on air, and let's go to our caller in the 901 area code. Caller in the 901, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, what's going on, David and Dave?
Hello?
Hello? What's happening?
Yes.
Yes. I had a question. And don't kick me because I missed tonight's show. I wasn't able to tune in. I had to go to work. But my question is this about TNA. Do you guys feel like they need to have a second show? But I also heard y'all mention about something different. What would be different? So, I mean, if they have a second show like Explosion, doing something with Explosion, how about they bring back this exciting ring for that show? For fans out there.
That's a good question, and thank you so much for that call. I don't know if that distinction is enough. It boils down to what you do inside that ring, and it boils down to the talents you have. Now, there have been comparisons made many times of TNA to WCW. Nobody that I can ever recall has ever compared them to ECW. And the one thing that's a fact about WCW and ECW is those two companies failed. At the end of the day, they failed. So what is that next new? Nobody knows. Who is that next star? Nobody knows. But for the 10 years that TNA's been around, or 8 years that TNA's been around, they've shown growth. okay? Let's not get that wrong, but there should be more substantial growth at this point. Especially, one thing I laughed at, David, is in that matchup with Gunner and RVD. You look at Ric Flair at ringside, you look at RVD in the ring, and then you look at Gunner. And you know that probably in this entire year, let's say in this entire month in TNA, Gunner probably won't make what those other two made for that match tonight. That's one of the fundamental issues in TNA wrestling.
Well, the problem with TNA wrestling, though, like you said, is they've been now in business for 10 years. Who's the one big star they've made? You could say AJ Styles, okay? You could say AJ. You could even maybe say Samoa Joe. But everyone that has come to that company in the last 10 years, Vince McMahon has only taken back the guys that were his to begin with.
Right. Well, no, Monty Brown, remember?
Okay. You're right. And Braden Walker. And how did those two guys pan out?
Exactly. Let's go to our next phone caller, and that's caller calling from the 504 area code. Caller from the 504, you're live.
Hey, Damien. It's Brian from New Orleans.
Hello, Brian from New Orleans.
First of all, I'm going to say I didn't see the first half of the pay-per-view because I was at the SmackDown house show, and overall I had more fun there than I did seeing that pay-per-view.
How did Cody Rhodes do?
Cody Rhodes was fantastic.
Excellent.
He, in a way, stole the show, as usual.
Oh, of course he did. Of course.
I'm a Cody Rhodes
But
fan
did he
myself,
win?
so I'm right there with
Did
him.
he win? Did Cody Rhodes win?
Yeah.
Who did he beat?
Yes, he did. He did.
Ha!
Who did he beat?
Justin Gabriel.
Who did he beat?
Justin Gabriel.
Oh, of course. There you go.
You see, there you go, spinning it again. He won. That's all that matters. He won. He's endorsed. Stop it,
Justin
David.
Gabriel is like talent enhancement, which in the 80s they were called jibbers.
Brian, go ahead with your comment or question.
You won't hear an argument from me on that, David. But I wanted to answer your question about what the difference is between TNA. Like you probably guys already know this, but I mean TNA in the 10 years they've been in business, they have been fighting an uphill battle with lack of resources, lack of time to manage those resources, and just lack of management, and it's been uphill and it's just been going down. It's been getting worse ever since.
Yeah. You're right. And you know what? It's not a lack of resources. To be honest with you, and thank you very much for that call and your support of Cody Rhodes. To be honest with you, they've got the money, clearly. They're not. I don't want to turn this into, we did a 3-part series episodes on TNA, and some of its goods and its bads and its problems and its resolutions, but for some of the money they're paying some of these people, instead of that name recognition that thought would springboard them to success in the ratings, that could be being spent on marketing and taking care of the talents that they do have and making those talents better. Now, let's not lose sight of the fact that now they're working with OVW, and that's going to do wonders for a lot of their talents and make the business overall better for TNA. But, David, that clock is ticking. And while a lot of things have changed in the company, it was almost 1 year ago, about 10 months ago, where you speculated whether or not TNA would be around come this March. Looks like that's going to be the case, but you got to wonder how much longer Panda Energy is going to continue to bankroll that company, and the Spike TV deal is up this year. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. I think the Spike deal is October this year, isn't it?
That's what we heard.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to our next caller.
It'll be interesting.
Let's go to our next caller calling the 269 area code. You're live here on the post.
Hey, this is David from Michigan.
Hello,
I
Dave.
think the biggest problem people are having with TNA and WE is they're comparing it to the WE. You can't compare TNA to the WE. WE is way up here, and TNA is not even in the same neighborhood.
You're right. But here's a question, though, David. You have to compare the two because what's different between the two? If they're not TNA or WWE finding a niche audience or a specific audience by which they want to cater to, like ECW did, and like WCW did, to be honest with you, before the wars really started on Monday nights, because it was the cruiserweight that made them different. What makes TNA different from WWE? And if that piece doesn't exist, then you have no choice but to compare them to WWE because they're attempting to play on the same field.
Yeah, but they're not even trying to they're not even, like, they could be buying commercials during Monday Night Raw, like they do, like Raw does, or WE does, for their video games during, I'm watching Spike TNA, and all of a sudden you see a WE video game commercial.
But that's not competing. You're talking on competing on a ratings or television basis, maybe. I'm not talking that way. I'm talking about what the brands are representing themselves as and what they present. And while TNA was famous for its six-sided ring, its X division, and its knockouts at one point, which made it distinctly different from WWE because you couldn't get those things in it, right now, I'm not sure anybody can tell me.
Well, that is the biggest difference right now, though.
It's not. What's the difference between knockouts and the divas? Yes, the knockouts can wrestle better, but so can the divas.
Yeah, they actually get time on TV. Well, I mean, the divas, it's the same thing, yes, but all they're doing is going back. They're trying to do the Attitude Era, but they're not really pushing the envelope like the WE did.
But that doesn't address the question, or statement that you made, which is that the two can't be compared. TNA is delivering a product right now that they're trying to do the same thing as WWE is. And what I mean by that is there's nothing. I don't think that the X division. Okay, yeah, I'll give you that. You can't find a cruiserweight division in WWE, but look at half the rest of their cruiserweights. The knockouts and the divas, they've shown us. Anytime, remember David Hero, I can't remember the matchup, but maybe it was at Survivor Series, but TNA has given us good knockouts matchups. WWE, let's set up real quick by letting two of the ring generals get ring and mix it up and give us a good match. They do that. And as far as the six-sided ring, well, that's obvious. There's nothing different. But they're trying to create the same look, feel, atmosphere, energy as WWE, thus putting them in a position where they have to be compared to WWE on at least that level, in my opinion, anyways.
I think TNA is hurting because a lot of the old fans love the six-sided ring, love all those matches they did, like Feast of Fire matches, the King of the Mountain match. They don't even do none of those matches anymore. I think they could have lost a lot of fans from that.
Yeah, you know what? I would tend to agree to an extent, David Hero. David from Michigan, there were a lot of people who were fans of the six-sided ring and traditionalists, if you will. And, I think on a one-off kind of thing like they did last year, they could bring that six-sided ring back and be successful with it. But, that's the story there. I don't know how David Hero took a turn for the worse, I guess, and started talking about some of the problems with TNA, because they did deliver a good wrestling pay-per-view tonight. And we did ask you on Facebook to answer the question as to whether or not tonight's pay-per-view was a pass or fail. And we'll get to those results right now, and it's about equal. It's 51 to 49%. 51% pass, 49% fail, which is a bit different than what we normally see for a pay-per-view from TNA. It's usually skewed heavily from one side to the other. David, if you had to give it a score, and you do, because I'm asking you right now, would tonight's pay-per-view be pass or fail? And I guess the reason for that question, or the meaning behind that question, is, was it worth $34.95, or in your case, $45 or $49.95, or whatever it was?
No, it wasn't worth what I paid for it. But it's probably because it was so predictable of a show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they didn't do anything special. They didn't make me say, wow, I can't wait to see what happens on Thursday. It was just your basic TNA show.
All right, and on that basic TNA show, according to David Hero, the matches went as follows. Austin Aries retains the X Division Championship. John defeats the Pope. Gunner defeats RVD. RVD gets stretchered out as a result of a DDT on the concrete. Gail Kim retains the Knockouts Championship due to some brass knuckle interference, while Madison Rain was suspended in a cage above ringside. And Abyss defeats Bully Ray in the Monsters Ball match. Bully Ray takes out Abyss after the match backstage off camera. Matt Morgan and Crippen are still the TNA Tag Team Champions, defeating Samoa Joe and Magnus. Kurt Angle gets a win over James Storm. And Jeff Hardy defeats Bobby Roode by disqualification, meaning Bobby Roode retains the TNA World Championship. Tonight's pay-per-view, TNA Genesis, is in the books, and we'll talk more about Genesis and whatever we have in store from Chris Jericho tomorrow night on WWE Raw. We'll talk about all that on the Monday Night Meltdown radio show right here on Blog Talk Radio. And we want to thank all of you who joined us in the chat room. We want to thank all of you who joined us on Twitter and on Facebook. And the conversation continues well after we're off the air. This has been the Pro Wrestling Report post-show For David Hero, this is Damian Nelson saying thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow night on Monday Night Meltdown.
Don't forget to follow PWR right here on Blog Talk Radio right now. Be reminded of upcoming episodes and never miss Blog Talk Radio's most popular sports show. Follow PWR now.